Good morning, superhumans! I acknowledge the traditional owners of this land. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and to Aboriginal elders and peoples from other communities who may be taking part in this live stream today. So, today, you can see a bit of activity behind me. Oh, he's put a mask on. We're leading up to the to LinuxConf and the Open Hardware MiniConf, which is going to be January 23 to 25, I believe. And so we've got a fair bit of work to get ready for that. We've got a whole lot of conference badges, and I've shown conference badges on previous live streams. So here's one that failed testing, but we still have, I think, 100 that need flashing. And so Andy is here setting up a laptop so that he can go through and flash a whole bunch of them. And Astra is here too. Hang on, let's see if we can see Astra. Oh no, she just went off the other direction. Astra, come over here. Come on.
Sit.
Is she on camera? No, not quite. She needs to come a bit closer.
Come here.
Come on.
Come
on. She doesn't know what's going on.
Sit. Sit.
Oh, you can just see her nose on camera. There you go. Look, there you can see Astra. So, Astra is here to keep us company as well.
What is that? What is it?
Oh, look. Hang on. I've got to get out of the field of view.
You gotta pitch it.
What? Astra is chasing something. I think she might be chasing a squirrel. Yes. And this is a special squirrel because it's had one of Sion's boards, the tiny Pico. Oh, thank you. So this is a work in progress, something that Andy has been doing for a little while. It's very appropriate for this channel. So we've got a squirrel. It's got RGB LEDs for its eyes, and he's found an appropriate place to shove a tiny Pico. So the idea is that this squirrel is going to probably be linked to something that monitors the live stream chat. Hello. No, this one is not for you. And in a similar way to the script that did the party poppers thing, we could have the little squirrel react. So that's a cool work in progress. Yes, Sion, I know um, I've been slacking around all week. I've still got 100 that need flashing. It's I've been getting through them, but it is quite a hypno squirrel. Yes, that would be cool. Two little eyes. So yeah, it is quite a process getting through doing the flashing. So there was the assembly, which was a whole big thing in itself, and that was distributed among a number of people, which was fantastic. So Pancake Legend, who is normally in the chat here, and John Spencer, who is also normally in the chat here. I haven't seen either of them yet this morning. They did a whole lot of the assembly, soldering the displays onto the PCBs and that sort of thing. But then after that, they had to go through the testing process, which we saw last week. Then they need to be flashed with MicroPython and the ArUco firmware. That takes a couple of minutes per badge. And so when you're doing hundreds of them, something that takes a couple of minutes, suddenly you've got a day of work in front of you. So each of these little steps, you might think, oh, that's easy. It's only like 2 minutes to do that. Yeah, and then you do it 300 times. It's not such a little thing anymore. Any time that you can shave off each part of the process really scales out. And I know you were kidding, Sion. I know. I know you know what it's like to do things yourself repetitively at scale, doing lots and lots of boards. You know that pain way too well. Something went ding. What was that? Oh, okay. No, it was just a message. My sister is currently in Kuala Lumpur, where she's been living for the last few years, and she is just about to move back to Australia. And with my two nephews and her husband, and so there have been a whole lot of messages this morning talking about arrangements for her coming back, which is very cool. Alright, so to talk today, right near the end of the live stream, there was a really interesting thing that came up, and I can't remember who it was, but someone asked what my plans were for next year in terms of projects and things I wanted to do. And I want to put that call out again and see what you think you have in mind for yourself for next year. If you've got projects that you want to finish off, things you want to work on, please chuck them in the chat, because I would really like to know about it. I think it's cool to hear about things that other people are working on. Oh, and also the now how can I do this? There is a project I've kind of referenced obliquely over time and never really revealed because I wasn't ready to, and I'm still not ready to. But last night there was a thing on Twitter where yesterday I was vacuuming. Actually, I can't quite see it, but the water cannon is just over. It's behind Andy, just over there, and it's currently in a horizontal position. I was vacuuming yesterday, so I was down there, kind of near where Astra is right now, down on the floor with a vacuum cleaner, because I was trying to get the nozzle in and vacuum around those boxes and things. And I smacked my head on the water cannon, and I tweeted a picture of it, which from that point of view was looking up and showing all of the boxes up on the shelves. And someone who saw the picture realized that there are ArUco codes. Oh, the focus has just gone to the background now. So someone realized that there are ArUco codes or markers on my plastic containers and asked about it. So I yes, we need some focus on this camera. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to find this video actually. I might end up wasting everybody's time while I'm doing this. But yeah, I ended up revealing a bit about the ArUco codes and what they do, more than I had been intending to do. And if I can find this video, I know it's on my phone, but I don't know if it's on my computer. I will show you a news photo trick. Zooming in onto the screen on the back. Yes, reveal my Wi-Fi details or something. It's still focused on the background. Something I've found is that these Panasonic cameras have terrible autofocus. Terrible in a few ways. Firstly, it picks the wrong thing to focus on. And secondly, once it does focus, it kind of hunts around. Now, where will I find this video? So if I find it on my phone, I might be able to transfer it. This is going to be really gripping watching me find this. So, anyway, I'll try to explain what it's all about while I'm doing this. No, not that one. I want this one, and I don't want to play. Come on, pause. Where's pause? Pause. Okay. And then I'm going to stick this in my Dropbox so that I can find it, and then I can play it, and you can see it. Share, yes, come on, stick it in Dropbox. Why is that not working? I don't know. Alright, I think I'm going to give up on that. Here is the tweet with your video. Okay, so that is a better way to do it. Sion, you are thinking and I'm not. Alright, I'm going to just pull up the tweet and do it that way. Notifications. So what this is all about is finding stuff, because I've gone to a lot of trouble to set up a storage system in my lab where I've got lots of boxes, and you can see in the background there are these cardboard boxes. These are the shipping boxes that are used for Freetronics and Superhouse. And then you can see there are takeaway containers, which are smaller ones here. So I have 5 standard sizes of storage container. There are little takeaway containers, then the cardboard boxes, then the plastic tubs which are up on my shelves, and I think they're either 7.5 or 10 litre. Then there are some larger flat boxes, which I think are about 20 litre or 25 litre, and then 50 litre storage containers. So with those 5 sizes, basically I can store different quantities of stuff. Now where is this thing? Okay, I'll find this. Alright, this is going to be super dodgy, but let's see if this works. I'm going to switch to my desktop so you can see the video. Can I full screen this out of here? I don't know. Maybe. And pause it, take it back, and I'll turn up the volume. Maybe you'll be able to see what's going on here. I'm just going to play it. It's only a few seconds long.
Alexa, turn on the modular box.
Module's box isn't responding. Please check its network connection and power supply.
Alexa, turn on the modular box.
Got to stop that. Alright. Back to here. Alright. I have no idea whether you could see that properly or not, because when I started playing it, it went full screen. I couldn't see OBS. I couldn't tell what was going on. Anyway. So this is... How about the easiest thing is I will just stick... Where is it? I can get the URL for that particular tweet. Yeah, anyway. What I've got is a voice activated a location system that uses ArUco codes to track the location of all the boxes within the lab. And what I can do is ask Alexa where something is, and it illuminates LEDs along the... in fact, let's... if I go back to here, and this is just a... Hang on. I want to go back to desktop view. See, this is a total mess today. I don't know what I'm doing. Alright, you can see here in this picture, and if I zoom in, you can see that this is a picture of the shelves over my bench, and it's got all these containers on it, and you can see that there is a strip here that's illuminated. These LEDs lit up, and that's because I had asked where a certain tub was located, and you can see that on each of these tubs there is a little marker. It's a little bit like a QR code, but it's not. It's called an ArUco code, and it's used as a fiducial marker for things like augmented reality systems, and it allows not just the ID of the tag to be determined, but also its coordinates and its pose, so its orientation. So what you can do, if you have one of these in the field of view of a camera, you can determine the X and Y location within the field of view of the tag, and you can also work out the rotation, because it factors in the distortion that it detects of the tag. So you can have a flat surface with a sticker on it, and you can rotate it, and you can get the rotation information out of it as well. But at the moment what I'm doing is using it just for the XY positions, and that's being returned and updated into a MariaDB database. And then when I ask where something is, it's looked up in the database, and then it sends a command via MQTT to the notifier, which in this case is a Wemos D1 Mini connected to these RGB LED strips, and it illuminates the LEDs in the location of the tag. And the way I've got this set up at the moment is that there aren't even specific locations on this shelf. It is based purely on the XY coordinates. So I could shuffle all the boxes like half a spot to the left, and the marker would still come out in the correct location, because it's not like I've defined this is shelf slot 1, slot 2, slot 3 or anything like that. There's nothing hard coded in it. It's just a range across X and it figures out, oh, this is where the tag is across X, so illuminate those LEDs. So I could put those containers anywhere and the illumination would still come out in the correct location. Anyway, I'm going to do a video about that, and but not now. So, view, actual size. Alright, let's get rid of that, and come back to here, where my camera still hasn't focused. Let's see if we can get some focus. Is it going to? I'll move in and out. No, it's totally gone. Oh well. Now, what suggestions have we got? What are people working on for next year? Or what are your goals? I want to hear more about it. And, oh, okay. So, Sion asked, why did I choose those code types instead of QR? Alright, so the primary reason is that with... Sorry, Andy, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So the main reason that I chose that particular type of tag is that it returns not just the ID, but the XY coordinates. And the system is specifically designed for that purpose. You can think of it as being kind of like a type of QR code that has been optimized for multiple tags to be visible in the field of view and to not have any ambiguity. There are a whole lot of attributes about ArUco codes that give them advantages in this application compared to regular QR codes. So with a normal QR code, the general use case is that you have a single tag or a code in the field of view. I mean, you might have a few, you might have 2 or 3. For example, if you've got a box with some shipping information on it and it's got a few QR codes on it, you can scan them and you can generally return all of the QR codes in the field of view. But the problem is that a QR code is a generalized system, and it's designed for high information density, which makes it not so good when you've got a tag that is this big and you're trying to read it from 4 meters away or 3 meters away, and you've got 100 of them in the field of view. So one of the things that the ArUco codes do is that they're specifically designed to have as little ambiguity as possible. So with something like a QR code, if you imagine okay, just think about it, a regular barcode, so just a series of lines. It's like a binary representation of a number or a set of ASCII characters. And with many types of barcode, you can actually just generate them using fonts. There's usually a checksum, but you can literally take like an ASCII character and get the chunk of a barcode that represents that character, and then you just string them all together and you build yourself a barcode. And then you put a checksum on the end and you're done. With if you've got, say, 2 binary numbers and they differ because there is a digit in one position that is in, say the 3rd bit is a 1 in one of them and the 4th bit is a 1 in the other, so it's only offset by 1, those 2 codes are going to be very similar and they are only going to vary in a fairly small part of the barcode. Whereas with ArUco codes, when the dictionary is generated, it specifically generates them in a way that has the least similarity as possible, so that you have less false readings. If you get a false reading, you're not necessarily going to get, like if you get a false reading, you might get 1 bit that is wrong. That is not going to throw you onto an adjacent tag that is then going to return the wrong result. It'll throw you onto an invalid tag that is in between all of the tags. So it provides a bit of buffering and like a safety margin, so it can handle errors. It's better to get an invalid result that doesn't map to any known tag, because then you've got a known error, rather than getting an invalid result that maps onto an incorrect tag, because then you get a false positive coming back. And they're also designed so that they can be rotated and the angle can be determined. So when you scan an ArUco tag, you get back the ID of the tag, just like a QR code, but you also get its X and Y position, you get its angle of orientation, and you can get, depending on how much you extract out of it, you can also get the pose. So you can say it is at this orientation, it is rotated 23 degrees to the right, and it is angled away from me by 17 degrees. So you can then use that information to do things like overlay augmented reality visualizations onto the video stream that is processing the tags. Yeah, cool. And what is showing up on Andy's screen? Oh, is there anything confidential on Andy's screen? I hope not. I didn't even realize that Andy's screen was visible in the live stream. Yeah, I am very fuzzy because lots of reasons. Yeah, all right. Mike O'Connor had a great question. Does anyone know if it has motor moisture sensor? Moisture sensors are not something that are all that common, not like temperature sensors. Tasmoda would definitely support it, because typically with a moisture sensor what you get back is a value based on usually a resistance or a capacitance on the sensor. So if you can read, like Tasmoda can read analog inputs, so I expect that you could probably read from a moisture sensor without any trouble. It would, yeah, but that's a good question. If anyone has specifically done that and knows of that, please stick it in the comments. So it's leak detection. Yeah, there are leak detectors around, and I'm pretty sure that I've seen people put Tasmoda on them. So there are, just trying to think about what there is. Yeah, I can't specifically think of something I can link you to right now, but that sounds like a reasonably easily solvable problem, Mike. All right. Andy Dix suggested holding the hand close to the camera to get it to focus, and then it might refocus. Oh, it has refocused in the meantime. Now, what I can do is take it out of autofocus mode. The problem is, here's the catch. As I lean towards the camera to reach it, because it's a fair way from me at the moment, it'll refocus at the closer distance. And then, hang on, I'm going to see if I can reach it to turn off autofocus. And now if I move back, I'm probably... Oh, no, I'm still in focus. No, rabbit ears. Perfect. Yeah, so Frank said Vegetronic sells a moisture sensor which gives 0 to 3 volts. Yeah, and you could feed that into an analog input onto something like a D1 Mini running Tasmoda. That would work just fine. Yeah, okay, cool. Unexpected Maker said, I just took a reel of PLA filament that has been left to the open air for almost 3 months and dried it in my toaster for 2 hours, and now I'm printing with it, and it's printing perfectly. Cool. So yesterday, Sion released an update to his Reflow Master, which is his retrofit controller for toaster ovens to turn them into reflow ovens for surface mount soldering. And the new version now has a bake feature, which is really, really cool. So baking is when you bring the temperature of the oven up and then just hold it for an extended period of time. But it's not to make it hot enough for soldering. The idea is that you use it for drying things out. And the common applications for that are things like drying out printer filament. So what you can do is put the filament in the oven, take it up to say 60 degrees or whatever the number is, and then just hold it there for a couple of hours. And that dries the filament out. Any moisture that it has absorbed will boil out of it, will evaporate out of it. And then you've got nice dry filament again. But it's also really useful for things like WS2812 LEDs. And I've had this problem in the past. There are some types of devices like WS2812s which have got, and I think the reason that they're particularly susceptible to it is that they have that clear material. I think it's kind of like an epoxy that sits over the top. So you've got the little bond wires inside the LED, which are what emit the illumination, and then there is the clear over the top of it, which is like it's a kind of like a glue that gets squirted into the LED. So that clear little dome section over the front is a material that over time can absorb moisture. And the problem is that if your reels of LEDs haven't been stored in a moisture controlled environment, and then you put them into a reflow oven, they can crack and explode and do all sorts of things, because the moisture that is inside, that's been absorbed into it, heats up very rapidly and expands, and then it can destroy your LEDs. And I've actually had this happen, where I've had WS2812s that I've had in storage for a while, like they might have been sitting in a box for a year or a couple of years. They've absorbed moisture over time, and then you reflow them, and all your boards are ruined. So something that you can do is put the reel of LEDs into an oven to bake them, and because you're heating them up, you're not making it really hot, you're just bringing it up to like a higher temperature than normal for an extended period of time. It doesn't make the moisture in them boil, it just makes it sort of evaporate and it comes out. And that way you can dry them out, and then when you put them on the board, run them through the reflow oven, it all works perfectly. Yeah, as Peter said, gas in the LED. Yeah, you don't want that. Makes them go pop. Yeah. So, if you have one of Xeon's Reflow Masters, go and check out the new firmware, because it adds that feature, which is very cool. That's a really useful thing. I don't have a Reflow Master. I've got a toaster oven which I set up, I think it must be nearly 10 years ago now, for doing reflow. And I just used initially I was just doing it by hand. So what I did was put a thermocouple in the back of it, and I would sit there and watch it, and I was being a human PID controller, and I would control the power and just turn it on and off and try to hold the target temperature. So I did that a few times, and it was really frustrating. And I ended up putting in one of the little Rocket Scream reflow controller boards. So I've got an Arduino with a Rocket Scream shield on it, which has got the input from the thermocouple, and it controls the power. And then I run a PID system on it. And that ended up being my main reflow system for, must have been about 6 or 7 years. And then I ended up getting that the much bigger reflow oven, which is through that door there. Now it's all been moved in there, and my old toaster oven with its PID controller is currently in a cupboard in the garage. But what I really should do is drag it back out and put a Reflow Master on it, and yeah, use it for baking, because I've got a whole bunch of filament. As you can see, there's filament up here. These are all boxes of filament above my 3D printer, and there are more rolls of it, which you can't quite see. Oh yes, you can see, just everything is backwards there. So there are rolls of filament in the lower enclosure. So that's got clear plastic over the front of it. That's actually enclosed. It looks like it's just an open area, but it's an enclosed thing. And that little black thing you can see there is a temperature and humidity sensor. And there's another one up there. It's a temperature and humidity sensor in the top enclosure. But yeah, being able to bake filament would probably be a good thing. Alright. Oh, Robin. Yeah, so you have a voice controlled locating system as well. Yeah, if you've got someone else that knows where everything is, that's easy. Just ask them. Oh yes, you know what Andy really needs is a balaclava. Because, yeah, someone just said you look like a elite hacker sitting there with your 2 computers and all your terminals open. You got a mask on, but it needs to be a balaclava. Yeah, yeah, that's that's better. Yeah, he's just hacking the Pentagon and uh, yes. So,
If you've got a mobile camera, I might be able to show something for just a few seconds that someone asked about the other week.
ooh, okay, mobile camera. So someone asked a question. What was the question? Just while I'm getting this camera ready.
Give me 2 seconds. I'll just set it up and.
All right.
I'll let you know.
I'm just getting out my laptop. No, not my laptop, my phone, because I'm going to switch to mobile camera. If I turn it this way.
Might need just
All right. Andy needs a minute to set it up. But what I'm going to do is switch to my my phone as a camera so that I can show you something that Andy's got on his laptop. Yeah. Dodgy. Yeah, so that's how Biden won the election. No, let's not get into that conversation. I really do not want to touch on that area. Yes.
Yeah, we can show it now if you like.
All right, hang on. I'm just going to switch to, what have I got? From where? Portable. Let's see if we get video coming through. All right, I've got portable camera. Just backing up. So that,
of course,
it's
it crashed just when I see it coming over. That's all right. I'll
All right.
start up here. Yeah, it's good.
All right, hang on. I'm just showing the little squirrel sitting here looking at the thing. Oh,
Yeah, so you just zoom in.
there's Astro. Oh no, Astro. Astro just knocked something with his
So
house.
just zoom in that image. You can just see that pretty clearly. Okay, so
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was something I was asking you the other week about
Sign language. Yeah.
sign recognition. Yep.
So, I don't know how clearly that was coming through, but if you look up the top of the screen, you can see in the yellow text it says prediction. What's happening here is that the video feed is being processed by a machine learning system, and it's reading the sign language that Andy is doing. And
Poorly.
It's reading it poorly. Oh, reading it, no. You're doing it poorly? Is that what you're saying? Yes. Yeah, Andy's probably doing sign language with a hearing accent. And so, yeah, you can see crying, communicate, cat.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so patting a cat is the cat symbol. Yep. So it is.
So someone's asking if that was possible.
Yeah, so someone was asking if it was possible to read. Hang on. I've got no indication of what's happening on the phone other than looking back at the screen. So someone recently was asking if it's possible to read sign language and interpret it. And yeah, that's a little demonstration of doing that. So I've got to switch back to the other camera, jump out of here. Yeah, so sometime what would be really cool would be to have Andy here on the live stream when he's not busy, occupied doing something like this, because I'm doing a quick mental calculation here of how much I'm allowed to say. Andy can tell me if I'm not. Basically, Andy works for a company that does machine learning, and they build really cool things for a variety of clients. And so, yeah, there are all sorts of things that that we could talk about, or that Andy could talk about, that I'm sure would be super interesting. But we need to do that in a scenario where he can actually sit and talk to you and explain stuff. Yeah. Oh, Sion. Yeah, not so much a guest spot. It was more that we were just trying to figure out a schedule when Andy could come over and do some flashing. And of course, what's happening is I'm sitting here doing no flashing at all, so I'm being no help whatsoever. And Andy is there working away, doing what I really should be doing. So Think Help said, is that OpenCV? I guess that was a question for Andy in relation to the gesture recognition, not gesture recognition, the sign language recognition.
No, it's a neural network.
And it's a neural network. Yeah, so there is a video stream going into a neural network, and it is running a model that has been trained on a whole bunch of data, so that it has learned how to recognize the different gestures. Yep. Yeah, Ross said, is he writing Python in Vim? What a goddamn madman. Yeah, so, yes, writing in Vi, actually, I think.
Old school.
Yeah, old school. It's not even Vim, it's Vi. And with syntax highlighting turned off, with green on black for total neatness. Yes, that's the way Andy works. Yeah, I've become so dependent on syntax highlighting that when I look at Andy's terminals and it's all just green on black, I start having trouble figuring out where things end. And for me personally, it makes it harder to spot things like syntax errors, because Peter, no, we're not going to go Ed. I've had enough of Ed. Way back in the early days.
Tico.
Was that Tico? Pico?
Tico.
Tico. Yes. I used to use Pico. I don't know about Tico. Yeah. Alright, so anyway, my point was, Andy is the guy who got me onto MQTT in the first place, and that would be, it must be about 11 years ago. It was shortly, we first met at LCA in Hobart, which I think was 2009, give or take. Linux Conf AU Hobart. What year was that? It was the year that
2009 in Tasmania.
2009, yeah.
You took a car down on the ferry.
Yeah. So it was the year that that Hugh Blemmings and I did a tutorial on hardware hacking for software developers, and we talked a bit about the Arduino and various other things. And Andy was there at the conference, and that was how we met. And we've been great friends ever since. So shortly after that conference, it would have been, I'm not sure how long after, but not all that long after, Andy was telling me about this fantastic thing called MQTT. So it must have been sort of mid-2009-ish at a guess. And he came over and helped me set up my very first Mosquito installation. And I've been running MQTT ever since. So, yeah. All my ramblings about MQTT over the years, you have Andy to blame for it. Yeah, so... Peter Lawler, editing 3 lines of M4 in Ed, 1 week of my life I'll never get back. Yes. Alright, where are we at? It feels like I've just been talking randomly this whole time. I don't even know what I've been talking about, so I guess this is just a regular live stream. Alrighty, so I still want some suggestions about, or some things that people will talk about for what projects, or what are your goals, or what things do you want to do in 2021, because as Andy just pointed out to me before I started, this is actually the last live stream before Christmas, which is only a few days away, less than a week away. That's ridiculous. And then I think I've got 1 live stream just before New Year's, but this is pretty much the end of 2020. So I want to know what 2021 is going to be for you. Yeah, okay, Dodgy. Dodgy is my my anchor. He's bringing me back to the topic. So bin location was the last topic before you went chasing squirrels. Yeah, we need to get this little guy connected up to the chat so that it reacts anytime someone says squirrel. Alright, so, Sion said, goal for 2021, expand the business and bring someone else on to help me before I burn myself out. Yeah, that's the danger. You, like Sion has plenty of business experience. He's done other things in the past, and I'm sure he's got lots of expertise in terms of scaling. But it's definitely the very early stage when you're doing a bootstrapped thing like this. So no external funding. It's just start a business with some of your own funds and try to build it on revenue. That initial stage of going from you yourself to you plus someone else helping you is a really big leap, because all of a sudden you become responsible for someone else's income, and if you have sales that are down or expenses or something for a couple of weeks, you still have to pay their wages. You can't just suck it up, but you can if it's just you. So yeah, it's a difficult thing to go through, a difficult stage to go through, and I kind of tried to go through that with Freetronics and didn't really succeed. And now Freetronics is back to just me part-time. Oh, hello, Astra. Hello. But that's okay, because now I'm doing other things. So, we got some other suggestions. So, yeah. Well, Ross said, unexpected maker dude, you just need another pick and place runs. Yeah, a whole chain of them. So, yeah, this is... Dodgy has said, everyone knows by now I'm hoping to build a new home automated house next year. Still at this late stage of guessing what I want that to look like. Now, this has led to some really interesting discussions on the Superhouse Discord, because for a lot of us playing with home automation or just little projects that we're working on at home, we're doing a retrofit or we're working with an existing system. And so every now and then you go through that, that what if, the dream situation of, imagine you were building a house from scratch and you could plan it the way you wanted to and pre-cable everything that you wanted to, do all of those sorts of things. And so Dodgy is in that situation at the moment. And of course, unless you've won Tats Lotto, then you can't just go crazy and provision everything. You have to be very careful about budget and how much do you spend on certain things, and put in what you think you'll need but not over provision. So and a lot of the time there'll be things that you want to do but that are just beyond the budget, so it becomes a bit of a balancing act. But yeah, Dodgy is in that position at the moment where he is currently planning to build a house and trying to work out what he can achieve within his available budget, and it's a bit of a different situation to what a lot of people are in. And so he's been talking about it on the Superhouse Discord, and if you want to hear more about that and have some suggestions, then please jump on to the Discord. In fact, I will stick that link in, so I don't think I've given this link recently. Let me see if I can type properly. Yeah, so yeah, so Dodgy said, tell me about it. I've been designing the house in SketchUp for the last 4 years, waiting for the planets to align. Yeah. Oh, Gary had a question I'll get back to in just a second. So, yeah, the journey that Dodgy is on right now is a really interesting one to watch, and this is an area where things like the Superhouse community can get involved and provide suggestions and feedback. And if you're interested in the sort of things that he's planning for his house, please jump onto Discord, because he's done things like show proposed floor plans and where wiring would go and things like that. And thinking about this, thinking about this in advance is interesting. It's a nice little mental exercise. All right, so Gary had a question, which is, when will the board for the advanced version of the air quality sensor be available? That is actually moving back up the priority list now. The air quality sensor was kind of stalling because I hadn't got through that episode about setting up the software stack. And so I've got one of those plastic tubs up there at the moment is the prototypes for the Pro version. Ooh, let me just reach up and grab that. Air quality sensor. So, right here, I have my air quality sensor thing, which has got no QR code on it, so I can't locate this box, except the old-fashioned way. And I have some prototypes of, lots of prototypes of the new version. I'll show you a couple of them. I've been through a couple of iterations of this already. So this was the Pro version of the air quality sensor. You can see it's got 4 RGB LEDs on it. Let me chuck this over here. Go to the overhead camera. Overhead. Alright. And get some zoom happening. Here we go. Ah, better. Much better. Now you can kind of see what's going on. So this all goes into a 3D printed enclosure. So this is the front part of the enclosure. And the reason that there's double-sided tape on there and a header here is that there is a color LCD that goes on the front. Let me see if I can find a... Oh, and there's another revision of it. And as you can see, it's got a bodge wire on there, so even that's not final. And you can see I've patched a crystal in there. There are quite a few differences between these two boards. They're physically the same outline, but there are many differences between them. Oh, here's a display. Okay, so this is it's a 240 by 240 color display, and that goes onto the front like that. And there's an ESP32, so there's a Vroom32 module on the back, and I've got all of the pinout there documented. And this goes into the enclosure. Not even sure if this is the right version of the enclosure for this board. Well, it looks like it might be. So that's the front part of the enclosure, and you can see the display on the front there. There's a mode switch that pokes through the back part of the enclosure. Where is it? Oh, here's one of the backs. I'll drop this around. So that drops into the enclosure there, and it exposes, that's a BME 680 just down the bottom there, so that can do temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, and it can detect VOCs, so volatile organic compounds. And this is the inlet and the outlet for the particulate matter sensor, so it's a PMS 7003 particulate matter sensor. Display on the front, and you can see that the mode switch comes through the back. So that closes up, and the whole thing looks, it looks kind of neat. So the idea is that that can sit, well, you're looking straight down on it, but imagine that you're looking horizontally. This could sit on a shelf or something. It looks big on screen here, but the whole thing is actually quite small. And so you can display the air quality on the front there, and it can also report via Wi-Fi. So you're pushing the values to MQTT. There's USB-C on the side there. Now looking at it like this, it looks basically done. And in fact, this unit does function, but it had a few problems. So I ended up revising the design. I rethought what I was going to do with it. And this one, I can't even remember what chip. I think this one had a CP2102N as the USB to serial converter on it. And there were a couple of issues with pinouts, I think. You can't really see it on here, but there are some tracks just there that are cut. There's a little white mark that you can see just next to my finger. That's where I've cut some tracks. I had to reallocate a few pins. And then I did this version. And once again, the display goes over the front. So that sits on like that. And I think this fits into the same case because everything is in the same location. and I made a really big mistake here. This was a stupid thing to do. With this revision, I switched to a CH340G as a USB serial converter, and I hated it. I've used them in the past, and I'd forgotten how much I hate them, so I switched it onto this board while I was making other changes, and regretted it. So I'm going back to the CP2102N. You can see I've also reduced the LEDs. Now the reason for these the point of these LEDs, in fact, let's try powering one of these up. I have no memory whatsoever of what state these are in, like in terms of their software or what they are doing. I don't know if they're functional. So let's plug one in and see what happens. So the point of the LEDs initially, I think, is to display boot up status. Well, they're red at the moment, it's not showing up properly on the camera. Oh, now they've gone green. Oh, hang on, I had that plugged into the wrong point. Yeah, they're green. So that means it's now connected to Wi-Fi. And then I think green means it's also on MQTT. I can't remember the sequence. And so that, it's not displaying anything on the LCD, which is interesting. So the firmware on this is obviously not doing what it's meant to. But the idea is that that green, so if I put this cover over it, doesn't show up too well on camera, but the enclosure is actually glowing green right through the case. So this is just 3D printed in white. What is this? I think it's PETG, and the LEDs glow through it. So what I wanted to be able to do was have the whole thing change color, so that normally the LEDs would be off. And then if it detected anything that was hazardous, like the levels of something in the air that are a bit of a pain, a bit of a problem, it could do something like glow red. And you wouldn't necessarily just have to look at the screen, you can see the whole thing is glowing red. And then you know you need to pay attention to whatever's going on. And I put 2 LEDs on it to start with, and then I discovered I didn't really need 2 LEDs, I could just get away with 1 on each side. I think it probably looks better with 2 LEDs, but it's not necessary. Let's power up this one and see if this one's any more functional. So yeah, I revised the design. I switched the USB to serial converter. I dropped a couple of LEDs. I think I changed the pinout on the ESP flashing header. I can't remember. It was around the time that I was revising the header pinout. So anyway, this one, let's power it up and see what happens. We've got nothing on the LEDs and we've got nothing on the LCD. So who knows what software is running on this. And yeah, you can see a few more bodge wires there. This is a connection coming off the particulate matter sensor. So I need to do another revision of the PCB to remove all of those and to fix whatever the other problems are, and also to get rid of that stupid CH340G. That thing's horrible. And go back to the CP2102N. Anyway, the point of all of that was in response to Gary's comment. Oh, Sion said, a cheaper component that adds cost in time and support and frustration is not a cheaper part. Spot on. That was basically the... my brain misfired at some point and thought, hey, I'll put on a CH340G because they're cheap and they're easy to solder because they're SOIC, they're not QFN, and but yes, they're cheaper, but they're not cheaper if you take into account all of the support time and everything else. Yeah. Oh, Dodgy said, I find it really hard to get into the air quality sensor project. It's not like we have a choice to breathe or not. Yeah, that's true. But what I found is that I suppose the reason that I was interested in it is I was curious to know what things in particular will impact air quality. and part of that is driven by the fact that I've had sinus problems over the years, and I wanted to try to remove anything from my environment that would trigger that. So what I found is just having visibility of measurements is really useful. It's one thing to think, oh yeah, my 3D printer is putting out particles, and so that's bad, and my soldering iron is putting out particles, so that's bad, and then try to reduce them. But it's like, if you don't actually measure it, you don't know. I'm just repeating Pancake Legend again here. To measure is to know. If you're just guessing, for example, what really triggered this in me was the whole thing about 3D printers. I had read a whole lot of people on Twitter and elsewhere saying 3D printers emit microparticles that float around the air and are a health hazard because they're so small they go in through your lungs and end up in your bloodstream, etc. And I've seen quite a few people saying that, and it sounds totally plausible. So I thought, well, let's measure it and find out. So that's what really prompted me in the first place to start looking into particulate matter sensors, and what the reason that I got the PMS 5003 and then the 7003 laser scattering sensors, because I wanted to see for myself if it was real. And the upshot of all of that is that and that is actually the reason up there. I know this is very small, so you can't really see it. Let's go back to this camera. Come on, OBS, you can switch. No, it's decided it doesn't want to switch cameras. Alright, so just inside the enclosure, right there, it's actually stuck up with with self-adhesive Velcro. On the inside of the 3D printer enclosure is a particulate matter sensor. And the reason that I put it in there, physically inside the enclosure, right over the 3D printer, it's within 25 centimeters of the print head as it's working, was that I wanted to see if there were particles coming off the printer. And the short answer is no. Well, not that we can detect with one of these laser scattering sensors, which detects particles down in the sub 0.3 micron range. So it can read really small, it can detect very small particles. And with the sensor right there next to the printer, I can run the printer and the particulate matter sensor doesn't even blip. It just shows the general level of particles in the air. So there's always something. There's pollen and stuff like that which it detects. But you don't see any change from the regular background baseline when the 3D printer runs. But just to show how sensitive it is, you can see how far away that is. That's in the far corner of the room. It's not a big room, but it's still a few meters away. That particulate matter sensor is inside the printer enclosure, so it's got clear sides on it. There are little air gaps, a couple of millimeters around the enclosure, but it's basically in an enclosure. If I turn on my soldering iron here at the bench, within a minute or two, we will start getting readings coming back from that particulate matter sensor saying that the sub 0.3 micron range has tripled or quadrupled. It's not just a little increase. You can see the chart goes like this and all of a sudden it's straight up. So I found that really interesting because my primary focus had been on particles coming from the 3D printer. It didn't even really cross my mind that there would be stuff coming from the soldering iron. Now I know that when you solder, obviously there's smoke and stuff, but in my head I kind of equated that more to just gas rather than particles. And the fact that the particulate matter sensor detects the soldering iron within a couple of minutes of it being turned on, it shows just how much is coming off the soldering iron. So anyway, the point of all of this is, because I've measured this, I haven't just guessed and gone on secondhand information. I have taken my focus from caring about particulate matter coming off the 3D printer, and I've discovered I don't have to care about that. So things like ventilating that to outside or putting a filter on it or whatever, I know I don't have to care. Instead, I have to care about what's happening with the soldering iron, because that really is having an effect. And I need to make sure that I'm conscientious about running the exhaust system when I'm soldering, and making sure that I'm not spending time breathing those things in. And the thing is that in the past, I've been really blasé about that, and now I know that I shouldn't be. The fact that I'm measuring this means that I now know where the real issue is. I'm not just guessing, which is cool. Yes, sawdust. That's a really bad one, and that sets me off. So Ross Flamingo said, yeah, sawdust can stuff you up real bad. I have a mate who worked at a CNC cabinetry making place, and the stories of the old guys there who never used PPE are scary. Yeah, that is one of the things that has set me off in the past. In particular, a circular saw with MDF. It creates really small particles, and that has caused me really big problems in the past. So I've become really paranoid about cutting MDF in particular, because firstly, MDF is originally made from sawdust. It's basically compacted sawdust that's been glued together. And secondly, it's got the glue in it. So when you cut it, you end up with microfine particles of sawdust and glue just floating around, and you're breathing it in. And for me, that has a terrible effect on my sinuses. So I can end up sick for days and days after cutting some MDF with a circular saw, unless I'm really careful with it. Yeah. Yeah, Doji said, MDF is really bad due to all the chemicals. I'm someone who should be monitoring the air, currently operating in the ignorance is bliss mode. Yeah, that can be tempting. But I've just found it really interesting. Anyway, Gary's original question was a simple one, which is, when are the new circuit boards going to be available? And I still haven't answered that question, because I've been chasing all these other squirrels. So, alright, what I need to do is take this and apply the fixes from it and put it into, and fabricate them basically, build a few, and then I will be able to do it. So since the last video came out, the one about data logging and Grafana and all of that sort of stuff, I have decided to switch the last two videos in the air quality sensor mini-series. Originally what I was going to do was the next video would be about building a reporting dashboard using Grafana. So the last video was more generalized. It was just taking data from any kind of sensor, storing it in Influx, and then charting it. But what I want to do is a video about specifically creating an air quality dashboard and talking about how the reporting systems work for different countries. In fact, I can find, because I've already done a fair bit of preparation on this, and I can show you a couple of the visuals that go with it. And I'm already working on the firmware that does the calculation. So, where is it? Anyway, what I'm going to do is switch it around. So the reporting one is now going to be the last one in the series. The next video is going to be the one about the Pro, which means that this is right near the top of the priority list right now, and it's going to come out very soon. So I'm just going to open up Keynote, because I use Keynote for generating the where are we? Come on, back to the desktop. Yes, so I use Keynote for making a lot of the animations and things that I use in videos. I find it's a really good way of just putting objects down on the screen, making colorful tables and displaying information like this. It's very easy to grab objects and move them around and snap them into alignment. So yeah, so the next video in the air quality sensor mini-series is going to be building one of these. So it does not just the particulate matter, but it adds the volatile organic compounds and all of the other cool stuff. And then the last one is going to be about this reporting, and that's what this preparation is for. So this is the way the UK Air Quality Index is calculated. You can see that they have got a range of 1 to 10, and there are these different parameters. So basically, this is kind of what I'm going to talk about in the video, but if you look at, for example, each of these measurements, so ozone in micrograms per cubic meter, across an 8-hour average, nitrogen dioxide across a 1-hour average. Imagine that the numbers for ozone fall into this range of 67 to 100, and for nitrogen dioxide it falls into 135 to 200, etc. And then here you've got the 2.5 micron particles in micrograms per cubic meter, 24-hour average, a range of 42 to 47. You can see that this is the highest reading out of all of these parameters. So therefore, what you do is you look across, you take the highest reading, and that is the index. So I've now implemented this in the firmware. I haven't pushed it to GitHub yet, but the firmware for the basic air quality sensor now implements the UK-based air quality index reporting. And so one of the parameters that comes back on both a distinct MQTT topic and also in the JSON, where it does the aggregated reporting with all of the values just as a single JSON message, that now in the next version of the firmware will include the UK air quality sensor, like air quality index. So in this case it would return a value of 5. And that is pretty simple, because all you do is you find what range the readings fall into, and then whichever one is in the highest value, that's it. Like, that's your air quality index. The US system is much more complicated. So the way it works is that there is a range for each of these readings, and say your value fell into the 35 to 55 range on PM 2.5, say it was 40 or something. What you do is you find which of these ranges it falls into, and then you come across to the left and you look up, and it's got 101 to 150, so you know the lower bound and the upper bound, and you know the in terms of the index, you know the lower bound and the upper bound in terms of the range, and you know your current reading. So let me find the part in the technical document. So this is the actual US EPA's guide to how the calculation works. I'll just bring this out a bit bigger so it's easier to see. So what you do is take, where's the formula? It's down here somewhere. Here it is. So what you do is we've found the low and high values for the range that it's reading, and we found for the index, and we found the low and the high for the particular range for the value, and then you do this calculation and you end up with a number. This gives you the index, so the air quality index for that one parameter. So what you do is you apply this calculation for every one of the parameters, and if I switch back to Keynote here, so what you do is you work across each of these things. So ozone, 8 and 1 hour averages, the particulate matter, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, etc. And for each of these you do this calculation, and then that gives you a number, so an index for each of the parameters, and then you find which parameter has the highest index, and then that is what your air quality index is for that set of readings. Anyway, I think I explained that very badly. I will try to do a proper explanation of that in a more rehearsed way when I do the video, but the end result is that what you get out of the US-based system is a number typically between 0 and 500, whereas with the UK system you get a number between 1 and 10. So the UK system is much easier to calculate. You just find the highest index and that's your number. With the US system you get a more fine-grained report, because you'll get a number where it says the current reading is 53, or something, and then you know, well, 53, so it's just fallen into this yellow band here, but it's only just into it. It's not towards the upper end of the yellow band. So with the US system, it's much more finely graduated. It's not just 10 graduations, it's 500 graduations, but the process of getting to that calculation takes a little bit more. So I have just a couple of nights ago, I started implementing the calculations in the firmware for the US Air Quality Index system, and that will be in the next thing I push to GitHub, I think, for the firmware for the air quality sensor. Oh, and also I fixed a bug. There was a really stupid bug that I discovered where when I was creating the JSON message to report all of the values, I actually had the 0.3 micron range particles per deciliter value being reported for both 0.3 and 0.5. So those two numbers always came out the same in the report, even though they shouldn't be. And it was because I had, it was a typo that I made in the in generating that JSON. So I fixed that bug, and I'm going to push that up as well. So if you were taking the values off the individual topics, so there's one MQTT topic for each of the readings, the values were fine. That was working perfectly. But if you took the JSON where it combined all of the values and put them into a single message and then decoded it, you would always get the same value for both 0.3 and 0.5 micron. Do you have numbers for EU? So Michael asked, so that is a good one. So what I'm intending to do for this video, so this is not going to be the next video, it's going to be the video after the next video, wrapping up the air quality sensor series, is going to be talking about these air quality indexes, how you calculate them, and then how to report those numbers using Grafana and whatever tools you want to use. I'm going to implement it in Grafana using the value from both the basic air quality sensor and the pro version of the air quality sensor. So either of them will be able to do it. It's just that the pro version has the VOC reading coming out as well. Now it can't, unfortunately there are certain things in this range. Right here, for example, I'm not doing any measurements of ozone, and I'm not measuring specifically nitrogen dioxide versus sulfur dioxide versus carbon monoxide and those sorts of things. All I'm getting is a single VOC number coming out of the BME 680 sensor. So there's going to be a bit of fudging in it. This is certainly not something that's equivalent to the readings that you would get from a proper US EPA or a Department of Meteorology measurement station where they've got the instruments to measure all of these things very accurately. This is more like taking the readings that we can with the instruments that we've got available and then coming up with an air quality index that tries to be representative. But if you have a situation where your ozone level goes ridiculously high, for example, these sensors don't have the ability to detect that. So, oh well, it's a limitation, but it's the best we can do. So, Peter Kirkott said, I lived in Beijing for 2 years. I reckon most days were over 5 on all indexes. Yeah, actually, I've only been to Beijing once, and so the afternoon that I arrived, it was like a typical hazy Beijing afternoon, and went to the hotel, and we were up, how high would it have been? I think it was only about 5 floors up, so it was high enough that we could see out a little bit, and it was basically, you could see some buildings nearby, and then it all just disappeared into the haze. And the night that, so the first night that I was there, it rained during the night and it cleared the air. I got up the next day, looked out the hotel window, and all of a sudden I could see for miles, and I could see there was a big sports field down there and all sorts of stuff. But the difference between arriving on a hazy afternoon and what it was like immediately after rain, totally different thing. Oh, Mike made a good point. Samsung air purifiers are on sale today on Aldi special buys. That could be worth checking out. All right, so Guy said, any idea when shipping may be resumed to the US? Yeah, that is a difficult one, and it's totally beyond my control. It comes down to, well, lots of things. At the moment, I can ship to the US. This is the thing. Shipping is still happening, but I can't use letter class or economy class packages, which in the past have been the two options for economical shipping. I can only use International Express or courier, and courier is ridiculously expensive. And even for a small box, like say I wanted to take this and send it to the US, so a small, imagine it was a little cardboard box. If I send that by standard international shipping, I think the price is around $21 Australian, give or take. And that is basically the cheapest that I can send anything to the US at the moment. So those packages are going, and they do get to their destination. There's a little bit of unpredictability in terms of how long it takes to get there. But those higher price services are working. It's just that I can't. The real problem is things like the ESP, the Sonoff programming adapters, which is tiny. It's a little thing. It weighs like 15 grams. In the past, what I've been able to do is just put those into a padded envelope, put a couple of dollars worth of stamps on it, and post it, and it would get there. But unfortunately, I can't send anything physical as a letter anymore. So there's no international letter and international economy packages. So the cheap options are gone, which really sucks. Yeah. Oh, I don't normally say this, but I'm going to call this out. Johnny Bergdahl said, don't forget the like button. Yes, please. Go and click the like button. And I know this is a silly sort of egotistical thing, but I've been watching the subscriber count over the last couple of months and thinking, I might actually make it to 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Now, that's definitely not going to happen now, but it's getting close. I don't know where it's at the moment, but I think it's like 99,500. So, yeah, there's no way I'm going to gain another 500 subscribers or whatever it is in the next 10 days. But, yeah, please hit that like button. Alright, time for a... Oh yeah, so Sion just asked, hey Mike, cause any link to the unit? Yeah, so Mike, if that Samsung filter is it from Aldi? Yeah, Aldi Special Buys is available. Please drop the link in here, if you can put in links. Ooh. Johnny said, I passed 55,555 subscribers today. Woohoo! Yeah, 100,000 is not a number that actually means anything. Yeah, Johnny, the next big one coming up for you is going to be 65,536. Or 35, depending on whether it's a signed or an unsigned int. No. That's not what it depends on. It depends on whether it's before or after it rolls over to the next significant bit. Yeah, so going to 32 bits. Yes. So, where am I at? I don't know. I feel like I need a drink. I've been talking. Oh, well, thank you very much. How does this work? Just unscrew it?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a SodaStream thing. I've never actually used a SodaStream. Andy turned up today with catering. Yes, puppy dog. So, it's crazy. He's got, he's brought, ooh. Thank you. So we got...
He never eats.
Packet of raspberries. he brought over raspberries and crackers and soda stream, all sorts of stuff. Is this? Yes, it will. Oh look, it's fizzy. Is there any flavour to it, or is it
No, just soda.
soda water? Cool.
Just hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. That's it, I think.
Hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. Everything we need for life, almost. Yeah. So, Sion said, Andy, you're welcome to my workshop anytime. All sorts of snacks there. And Dodgy said, well, reminds me of Wayne's World. Yeah, we're not in a basement, but maybe we should be. Also, I'm going to turn on some cooling if that's okay with you. It's this room is quite well insulated and it warms up, mostly because of these monitors. Like if I just put my hand over the top of the monitor, I can feel the heat coming off this. It's like I'm sitting in front of radiators. Yeah. I've actually recently been wondering if I should do the calculation of what it costs in power to run these monitors, and whether, well, I don't want to reduce the screen real estate too much, but these are now quite old, and I've been wondering where the crossover point is in terms of buying newer, more efficient monitors and the power saving that would have, and the point at which they pay for themselves. I don't know. Yes. Party on, Andy. Yes. Well, right now we don't have the technology, but in the past we would have had the technology to bounce the signal off the satellite down into the back of Mr. Biggs' limo. Except we don't know a Mr. Biggs with a limo. Alright. What am I looking at? I've still got the air quality sensor stuff up here. Get rid of all of that. Get rid of that. Alright. It sounds like the NAS discussion on Discord. Yeah, so that, for those of you who haven't been paying attention to Discord, and I only do sometimes, unfortunately, there has been a whole lot of discussion about migrating a bunch of disks in a computer to a NAS, and the question of going for something like Unraid or FreeNAS versus an appliance type device like a Synology. In fact, this has come up a couple of times. So since that last video came out where I showed all of the charting stuff, let me see. I'm not even sure if I'm going to show you this yet, but I'm going to open it up on another screen and maybe give you a little look at what I've got on my Synology NAS to show you how I've got this set up. So I've been thinking about maybe, let's see, bring this around onto this desktop and switch to here. So this is the user interface on my Synology NAS. Oh, RAM is getting a bit of a hammering there. I wonder what's going on with that. And I've got Docker on it. So in that particular video, I showed installing Mosquito and Grafana and all of those sorts of things on a Raspberry Pi, just directly into Raspberry Pi OS. But the way I personally run it is I have it running in Docker on my Synology NAS, and you can see here these are the containers that I've got. So you can see there's a Node-RED container here and an InfluxDB container. I've got Home Assistant running on it. I've got a Unify controller running on it. So that's how I manage my my Ethernet switches and Wi-Fi access points and that sort of thing. There's Grafana and Mosquito. So each one of these is in a separate container. Oh, I know why the RAM is getting a hammering. It's because I've also got a virtual machine running on it. So I've got an Ubuntu VM running on that NAS at the moment, which I was experimenting with. So, yeah, I've got these containers that are doing different things, and then I can update them by pulling down the newest image. So what I've got is, let's pick one so we can see. One of the issues with setting things up in Docker is making sure that your storage is persistent, and that applies to things like configuration and also to data. So as an example, well, InfluxDB is kind of a complicated one, so let's have a look at that. If we come into here, you can see that I've got, actually no, this isn't the most complicated one, but it's a reasonable example. You can see that I've got some volumes in here that have been mapped. So what I've got is storage within the NAS, so it's spread across multiple disks, and it's all set up to be redundant, so it's fairly resilient. If one of the disks in the NAS fails, I can just pop it out, put a new one in, and the NAS keeps right on going. And then I've got storage from my NAS mapped into Docker. So for example, I've got the influxdb.conf file is stored persistently on my NAS, and the varlib influxdb directory is also on the NAS. So what happens is that when the container starts, it reads from the NAS to load those files, which means that I can blow away the container, install a new version, like update it, launch the new one, and it will still read from the configuration file and everything that's stored externally. So my data and my configuration are persistent even if the container is totally replaced. So there are things like that that you need to be careful to do as part of the setup process. Yeah, cool. Oh, yeah, so Sion said, which Synology do I have? I think this is an 1821, the DS1821 Plus. So, yeah. But I've still got the original RAM in it, so it's only got 4 gig of RAM. And because I've pre-assigned a bunch of it to an Ubuntu VM that's running at the moment, that's why it looks like that. So I'm just going to switch back to here and see if I can find my my VM. I might turn that off, perhaps. Just logging into it. Anyway, I shouldn't be fiddling around with this while I'm on a live stream. It doesn't matter. Log off, power out. I'm going to see what effect this has on the RAM on the Synology. So, log out. And I think the VM is shutting down now. I just switched to a different desktop in order to do this, and on the same desktop I've got some stuff in Grafana, but no, I'm not going to get into that right now. Alright, sorry, I was off chasing a squirrel, and you couldn't even see the squirrel, which means that it is excessively uninteresting. So we'll leave that. Alright, yeah. So Sion said I'm running RAID 10 and I got the 10 gig card for it for when I get my new iMac, so I have 10 gig Ethernet between the two. Yeah, I haven't put a 10 gig card in mine yet, and my plan had been, up until just recently, my plan had been to put a 10 gig card in the NAS and then get one of the new model iMacs at some point when I can replace my existing one, possibly the i9 based iMac. And then of course Apple released the M1 and any plans I had went totally out the window, and now I'm in limbo because they might be imminently releasing an iMac with an M1 or an M1X or M2 chip or whatever it is in it or they might not. I don't know. But if I buy an iMac right now, what would probably happen is about a month later, there would be a new iMac with an M1X in it, and I would have buyer's remorse. But the interesting thing about the new M1s is that none of them have 10 gig Ethernet, including the Mac Mini. So anyway, this is a squirrel that's probably not something to talk about right now because it's not really related to the normal stuff I talk about on the channel. So well, the RAM hasn't changed. I wonder if that VM did actually shut down. I don't know. Oh, cool. So Mike has put in the URL. In fact, I'm going to copy that URL. I want it for myself before it disappears out of the chat. So if you're interested in the air purifiers from LD, there is a link in there. $300 for an air purifier. Interesting. PM10, Dutch control. 4-color cleanliness indicator. Alright, so if you're looking to buy an air purifier, that is probably something to check out. Because that's on special at the moment, at least here in Australia. So, alright, so Roger104 asked a very good question, which is one of those kick in the pants questions about why haven't I done something. So Roger asked, any movement on the light switches and the new controller board? Not in the last couple of weeks, unfortunately. I've had a yeah, my time has been rather jammed over the last few weeks because any discretionary time that I might have had around client projects has been taken up by the conference badge, for the swag badge for LCA 2021, and so time that I might otherwise have spent noodling around on projects like the light switches or the air quality sensors or whatever, I just haven't had available, unfortunately. But I'm hoping to do that soon. So the two projects that I really want to get to the point where I can say this is released, I mean, they're never actually finished. They're always improvements and bug fixes and things. But the two projects that I want to have done to the extent that other people can make use of them are the air quality sensor and the new light switches. Well, the light switches actually fall into, it's really several sub-projects. There are the light switches, like the smart switches with the RGB LEDs on them, and the thing is that those should, at this point, just be some software. That's it. It's pretty much configuring Tasmoda if I can make it do what I want it to do, because I think the hardware for that is all working. The other is the light switch controller, and I have it sitting just down under there. It's about 1.5 meters from me at the moment, so it's always there reminding me that it needs to be done. And yeah, I've got to get back to it. So that really ties in with the RGB LED light switches, smart switches. And I think in terms of order, what I should probably do is finish the smart switches first, because the hardware for those is final. This hardware is not final, as you can see from the bodge wires. But with the smart switches, I've got the boards here. I've already assembled prototypes. I've done basic testing on them. Well, it's gone through iterations. It's more than just prototypes. I've assembled the current version of the board, which is what should be the final board. So I've got it ready to go. What I need to do is just spend some time playing around in the software and making it behave the way that that we want it to. So, oh, Michael, thanks for coming along, but and thanks for hanging around until 1:35 a.m. Now go and get some sleep. So what I need to do with that is just play around with the configuration. And at this stage, what I don't know is whether I'm going to be able to get it to run entirely on Tasmoda, which I really want to do. If I can make those light switches run Tasmoda, it has some really big advantages. It means that I don't have to worry about firmware development and updates, and what I can do is make something like a template for Tasmoda. So you do the basic Tasmoda installation, you load the template, and then it'll be configured and work. And it means that I can take advantage of things like the Wi-Fi setup process that is already in Tasmoda, and you can use the Tasmatizer to flash them. It just makes it really easy. So if I possibly can, I really want to make them work with Tasmoda. Now the thing that's unknown about it, and what I haven't actually solved yet, is how to address the LEDs properly on the front of the light switch. So there are 4 RGB LEDs, well up to 4, there could be 1, 2, 3 or 4, and I need to be able to update them to change based on the state of the load of whatever you're switching, and that could be changed somewhere else. It's not necessarily changed when you activate the light switch. It could be changed through another light switch, or from a phone, or a schedule, or a sensor, or whatever. The cause of the change could come from anywhere. So I need to have a way of updating the state of the load via MQTT and have that reflected in the RGB illumination on the light switch. So that is, it's not hard. Like I can do that in Tasmoda easily if it is just a single LED and you're just turning it on and off, because what you can do is set up the MQTT topics and the configuration in Tasmoda to have that reflect the state of whatever it is that you're monitoring, and the action of the button can be disconnected from that logically. But doing it with a string of 4 WS2812 LEDs and being able to do things like change the color is not so easy. It's messing around with patterns in the driver. Anyway, I won't get into it. I've spent a fair bit of time messing around with it. It looks like I can make it work. I just need to get it properly working and make it neat. And then those light switches can be released, which would be cool, because then I can stop having that hanging over me as yet another item on the to-do list. There are enough of those already. Yeah, and then it comes down to this thing. Which I have waved around on the live stream many times, so I don't need to show you that in detail right now. So yeah, I'm breaking it all. Yeah, the light switch controller with all of the inputs and the little screen and the display panel on there, so the button panel. Yeah, this is my attempt at bringing back the old Cobalt rack sort of style with the menu on the front and the buttons. Anyway, that is further away from being done because there is some metal work to do and messing around with the hardware a little bit more. So, excuse me. Sion, okay. Thanks for coming along. I'll talk to you soon. Okay, so Gary said, can you show us the switch hardware? Yes, I can. Let me see where it is. But first, I'm going to grab another strawberry. Thanks to Andy. Alright, switches. Just over here, out of camera view. So that's still in easy reach. So this is the previous version. This is the current version, and I will stick them over here so you can see what they look like. let's get that camera out a bit. Move it there. So this is the previous version of the light switch hardware. So it's got, in this case, it's a 4-button panel. But I've also got 3-button and 2-button panels. And so it's got the RGB illuminated switches there, the controller board on the back. And then this is the current version. So this is what's probably going to be the final thing. And this is the 3-button version. I just don't have it connected onto the panel at the moment. But I've had this connected to my computer and I've been playing around with Tasmoda on it. So this one right now has Tasmoda installed on it. There's the ESP8266. All the parts are down underneath the PCB. So the difference with this one is that I took all of these parts that are on the top of the PCB and I put them on the bottom, along with the ESP8266. You can see the bottom of it sticking off there, and here you can see it sticking off. And the PCB has been pulled back from the antenna area, so there is nothing affecting the antenna, so hopefully we'll get good Wi-Fi performance on it. And I've also moved things around up here so that we've got good clearance, and you can plug the cable in there. So anyway, this one should be final. This should actually be shippable, ready hardware. It's v2.0 because I've had to go through a revision, but and it was a major revision, so I bumped it a whole version. I didn't just make it version 1.1. Thought it's enough of a change that it's going to be version 2, even though it's never been released. So that, in theory, is ready to go. I could make those available today, but the problem is there's not much point doing that when there's no final software to run on it. Yes. So, where are we? What am I up to? Sorry, I've kind of lost my mental train of thought here. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, some way of monitoring the state. Okay, so so Ross was asking about ESP32 with Ethernet and a few MCP I/O expanders. I assume that is talking about the controller, about this. In this particular case, yes, you can see the MCP 23017s all across there, and that's how it's connecting to all of the I/O that are in these sockets. In this particular version, this is the Ethernet. So on the front of the panel, you'd have the connections to the light switches, and this is the Ethernet connection. But this is just a pass-through. It doesn't actually do anything. It's there purely for mechanical convenience, so that this socket is exposed on the front of the rack mount case, and it passes through to the back, and then there is a little patch lead that goes to whatever device you have on the inside, which could be a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino or whatever you want to use, basically. And yeah, so I've already done a partial layout of a version of this PCB that has an ESP32 mounted on it in this area. But I haven't actually finished the layout of that one. And I'm not even sure if I'm going to, because what it might make more sense is to make it a bit more modular. You can see that there's a very long PCB here, which has got all of the I/O along this point. And then this point here, it might be better off to make that a separate PCB so that it's replaceable. Because everything apart from that, like if we look from there across, everything here can be the same. It doesn't matter what microcontroller you use. So what I could do is put a header on here. So at the moment we've got this little header, which is, it passes through I2C and power and reset. And we could just put another one on this end, and then this part could be on a separate board. So what you could do is use a different board depending on how you want to configure it. It could be a simple one like this, which is just a pass-through, so it takes power in the front or in the back, or you could do PoE. So that's a simple pass-through version. There could be a version that has an ESP32 on it with PoE and Ethernet. Like this portion of it could be replaceable and make that bit modular. Yeah, but I'm still kind of going over and over that in my head and trying to think of the best solution to that, how I want to do that. So anyway, that's the state of the hardware at the moment. On this particular one, so this prototype that I've been playing around with, here is the case, and you can see this one's got, it's another one of those panels. It's got the menu there, and it's got the LCD on there. Now this is the previous version of the control panel, and it's got a 128 by 32 OLED. So it's like a long and skinny OLED. This other one, hang on, I need all my hands here for a moment. So this is an updated version of the control panel, and it's got a 128 by 64 OLED. So I went from, you can see the two versions there. There's a little one which is in this metal case, and there is the larger one which has got the same menu buttons on it, but it's got a much bigger display. So it's twice as many pixels, and it's physically wider as well. So the pixels are physically bigger, and the whole display is larger. Makes it a bit easier to read from a distance. So that's the newer version of the hardware. And here, this was set up for a Raspberry Pi. So you can see the mounting lugs here. So these are riv nuts? Yes, riv nuts. So these are rivets with thread in the middle, so that you can screw straight into them with an M3 bolt. And a Raspberry Pi mounts on those, and then the front of the Pi was exposed here. But in the final version, the front of the Pi would not be exposed. The Pi would be sitting in the back somewhere, probably in this region, and just connected through to the Ethernet pass-through. And then that's the Pi hat that sits on it and does power over Ethernet and links through to the front of the panel. Anyway, there are lots and lots of parts. This particular project is quite modular. It's not just one PCB. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, so there are at least 4 PCBs in this assembly, and each one of them needs a little bit of work, unfortunately. So it's kind of functional. Like, I've had this working, running on the bench, and communicating with all of these, and being able to detect button events and things. So it's functional as a proof of concept, but it's not at the point where I could say, here, take this and use it. Yeah. Yeah, so Mike suggested make those blocks of 4 Ethernet ports a module, so there are 3 identical daisy chain modules. That is one option, and I thought about that, and in fact I've even fabricated them. Let's see, light switch. I don't know if I'm going to pull this out for now. I don't think I will, but I've made, hang on, let's go for some eagle. Just in the dying minutes of this live stream, I'm going to pull up eagle and show you what I've got so far. Because I have actually done versions of this that are just one thing like that, and I've done one that is 2. So, but I've only did I fabricate? I can't even remember. I think I might have had the other PCBs fabricated. This project has been going on for so long. Now, in fact, it's so old that I think it might be in my old Eagle directory. So I've got to try to find it. Light switch, light switch. No, not there. Just finding this is going to be a bit of a pain. LSS, no, that's the light switch shield. No. This is going to be riveting because it's going to be me. Oh, here we go. Found part of it at least. I2C panel. Well, I'll open this up while I'm looking for other bits and switch back to desktop. Come on, desktop. Okay, so this is the this is part of the schematic. Well, that is the whole schematic for the little display board that goes in the front. And oops, and that is the design for that board that I was just showing you. So this is the thing with the little panel. That's the design for this, which is the control panel part of it. But what I'm looking for is, come on, I thought it was in oh, here. It's right here. Okay, so this is the version of it that is just 8. Where are we? Rat's nest. There. Yeah. So as you can see, it's got the shrouded header on each end as a pass through. So what you could do is use 3 of these and daisy chain them to take the place of 1 of these, or you could have 2 of them and daisy chain them. Because you need to have a unique address on each of these MCP 23017s, there is a little solder jumper somewhere on the... Oh no, it's not a solder jumper. This part here. So you can see here there are these pin headers, and this is what you can use to set the unique addresses. And I've also done a version of this that you can see here, which has got 2 of those big headers. And then there's a version here which has got 3 of the big headers. And that's the one that I've just been waving around in front of the camera. So this one that you see on the screen right here is this thing. But yeah, we could also do it as that, which is effectively that part. So it's just these 2. Or we could do it as this one, which is effectively just one of these with a header on each end so that you can daisy chain them. So yes, it's flexible in that respect. You could make a small version of the controller if you wanted to with just 8 inputs, or you can do it with 16 or with 24. Right. Gary, hello to Ireland. Thank you for joining us. You haven't missed much. Yeah. And if you're joining now, I'm going to be wrapping up in a few minutes anyway. Alright, I've got to avail myself of Andy's very generous soda stream provision. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm fading. I'm going to have some more raspberries.
Dogs going nuts in the backyard.
They're running around.
Yeah, I could hear squirrel on the porch and just checking to make sure that the yard is still intact.
Astra is outside currently running around with my dog Bonnie, having a good time, which is good. Get some exercise for both of them. Alright. So, where does this leave us with the light switch controller project? It's high on the priority list. Ooh, thank you. Ooh, how good is this? So, more catering. I've got crackers and dip. Tzatziki dip. Very nice. So, where it leaves me is it's something that I really want to get done, but I need to get through a couple of other things before I can really return to playing around with this and give it the focus that it needs. So this comes back to that question right at the end of the live stream last week, which is what do I want to achieve, or what are my goals for things I want to work on. And what I really need to do is get through a couple of things so that they're finished, and I can mark them off my to-do list, people can start using them, and then I can move on to the next thing. I've got way too many projects that are in this state, and this is hardware that is basically done. The other parts of the system need some slight revisions. There needs to be some code for it. I need to write documentation for it, and then people can start using this. Like, this could be released, but it just never gets, that final little bit where it gets out there. It doesn't get there because it sits in a box on a shelf somewhere, and there are always other projects that are ahead of it in the queue, which I personally find frustrating and a little bit sad. It gets me down sometimes because I sit there and think about all of these projects that I really want to, and the thing is, it feels so close. Like, I can plug this in now and it works, but
Whip him harder. Work harder. Work harder.
The beatings will continue until morale improves. So, yeah, it just frustrates me. I don't know, it's something about the way I work is that I don't maintain focus on something like this through to the point where it is done before I move on to something else. And I end up interleaving a whole lot of projects. I'll send boards off for production, and then while I'm waiting for the PCBs to come back, I'll work on something else, and then when they come back I'll assemble it, and then I'll go off and work on something else, and then I'll come back and work on software, and these things just drag on and on and on. So, I'm really sorry about that. Oh, John Spencer said, let me know when you replaced your screens. So John, I think, currently has at least 3 of my screens at his place. I think it's 3, maybe more by now. Yeah, so UTB FCC asked, did I install Ethernet cables in my house walls at the time when it was built or after the house was built? The answer is both, because a couple of years ago, quite a few years ago, we did a really big extension and renovation, and so where I am now, in this lab area and the garage and some other parts of the house, were all built new a few years ago. And as part of that, it was all pre-cabled. So all of the new part of the house was cabled when it was at the framing stage. And at the same time that was done, well, actually before that was done, I had retrofitted Ethernet into the old part of the house. But then, as we were doing the renovations, one of the things we did was the old part of the house was almost entirely gutted. We moved a few walls around, combined some rooms, and changed a few things. Hey, thanks, Tim. So for quite a while, our house internally, like from the outside, it looked okay. All the weatherboards were on, etc. But from the inside, it was bare frame because all of the plaster had been stripped off the walls, it had been stripped off the ceiling, so the inside of the ceiling space was all exposed. And while it was at that internal frame stage, the electrician did some recabling. So in terms of mains cabling, there was a whole lot of new stuff put in, new power circuits were run, and at the same time there was Ethernet cabled through. So some of it has been done by fishing through walls, but I was in the very lucky situation where I could do a whole lot of recabling while the framing was exposed, which is by far the easiest way to do it. Hey Tim, thanks for that. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And I try to make the videos easy to follow. Yeah. So Dodgy said, I call it the procrastinator mentality. We'll sometimes do anything to avoid finishing something that blocks us. I think I do that sometimes. Like if there is something that feels like a roadblock, then I'll avoid working on it. But I think with me, it is more of the squirrel problem. It's more of the distraction that I have so many things that I want to do, and I have ideas that buzz through my head that I think, oh, this sounds really cool. I want to go off and do that. So I will very quickly, like I will jump to opening Eagle on a new project, start laying out a whole new board on something when I've got 20 other projects that are in this stage sitting in a box and it's not finished, but it could be. So I think the big discipline for me is not starting new things. That's what I've really got to try to do, and yeah, and really focus on going back to these projects that are at that 95% point and finish them. One of the things that I actually find is a barrier for me is the idea of trying to make videos about this as well, because part of the problem is that I don't want to just work on a project like this and then when it's finished make a video. What I really want to do is show the process, and a lot of the time I fail on that because recording the process takes a lot of time. It's very easy to grab a board like this, pull it out, plug in my laptop, start messing with firmware, and just do that in short bursts. But if I've got to record while I'm doing that, it just takes so much. Setting up cameras, setting up the microphone so I can record while I'm doing it and talking about it, doing screen captures, etc. while I'm working on it. The overhead of documenting the process compared to just doing the process is really high. Yeah. Yes. Oscar said, hey John, been a while since I tuned in. How are the health issues? Hope you're doing better. Thanks for asking, Oscar. Yeah, I'm doing much better. So it's really only in the last 1 to 2 weeks that I have been back to what I would call pretty much normal. So like breathing is normal, sleeping is normal. And so it took a really long time to get back to some sort of degree of normality. Yeah, so Tim and Frank both said I needed an assistant or someone to help get that last 5% done. The problem is that these are not commercially viable projects. This is all the stuff that I'm doing in my spare time and mostly for the fun of it, and in the hope of making videos about it, but I don't really make money on it. If you look at the hours that are involved in doing something like this, it's really not economically viable. It doesn't make any sense to do it, and it certainly doesn't make, well, it doesn't make me money, let alone enough money to pay someone else to help with it as well. Yeah, so Andy waved to Dodgy. Yes. So UTB FCC asked, are you planning to add an air purifier into home automation so that it can be controlled from Node RED when dust sensor readings go high? I don't know. I've been thinking about that. So the first step was just quantifying and reading all of these things so that I can discover when there are problems. I have been thinking more recently, very seriously, about getting an air purifier, probably just for this lab area. Not necessarily for the, like trying to do it for the whole house, but this is it's a fairly well enclosed area, and it's small enough that an air purifier could probably have a good effect in this little volume. It's not like I'm trying to clean the air in an entire house. So, yeah, I have been thinking about it, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do it. It's an extra expense, something else I've got to buy. But then, if it makes a difference in terms of me not getting sick, then it's worth it. Yeah, it's one of those things where, all right, an air purifier is $300, and I would think, $300, that's a fair bit of money that I wouldn't just go out and spend without thinking long and hard about it. But $300, if that saves me, potentially days and days of being unable to be productive, then it's easily worth the money. So, yeah, anyway. I've really only just recently got to the point where I am quantifying the problem enough to be able to start thinking about the decision of whether I want to buy one. Yeah, that is a really good point, Dodgy. So Dodgy said I could always just hook it up to the extraction system. Yes, that I really should do that, because that is the thing is that the data is already coming in from the air quality sensor. My extraction system is already controlled by the home automation system via MQTT. That would really be two extra nodes in node red. Ooh, Tim, thank you very much. That is very generous. So now I've got an air purifier fund. So in node red, basically I would just have to take it out of the values coming from the air quality sensor and have a function node that looks for a threshold, and if it exceeds a threshold, it sends a command to the extraction system. And the other thing I've thought about doing is setting it up so that when I turn my soldering iron on, it also turns on the extraction system. But I like the idea of doing it off the data coming from the air quality sensor. That is a neat idea. One of the problems I've got right now is that my extraction system is quite noisy. Hang on, I'm going to turn it on. So if you have a device which is she who shall not be named, do it now. So, yeah, the Celtic Beast said, do it now, and then the message was retracted. I am kind of tempted to open Node Red right now and start messing around in it, but I'm already well past my 2 hours, so I won't do it right now. Let's see. So let's just see if you can hear this. Alexa, please turn on the exhaust fan.
Okay.
Look, you can see that Astra is paying attention. She's looking over there wondering what's making all that noise. I don't know if you can hear it through the microphone. So the microphone is up here near the computer. Where Astra is down there, hello, there is an extraction fan which is hanging down underneath the bench, and that is sucking air from the soldering area and from over near the laser cutter, goes around and it vents it outside, but it makes this noise. So right here I have a set of Bluetooth headphones with noise cancelling built in, so often when I'm sitting here soldering I will run the exhaust fan and I'll have the noise cancelling headphones on, but I really just need to have a quieter exhaust system. Alexa, please turn off the exhaust fan. Didn't hear me. Alexa, turn off the exhaust fan.
Okay.
That's better. Now the noise goes away. Oh, and Johnny, thank you for your contribution to the air purifier fund. Yeah, so Dodgy said not very loud, but that's probably just because of the pickup on the microphone here, being over near the computer, and the thing is over there under the bench. So if I'm sitting here at the soldering area, that noise going, if that's going for hours and hours in the background, it's the sort of thing that if it's running for a couple of minutes, you can kind of ignore it, but if it's going for hours, it's really annoying. So I need to have already a third there, yeah. So what I need to do is get one of those LD air purifiers and see if I can hack it to link it into MQTT and yeah, maybe do a video about that. That would be cool. So hang on, let's see. I had it open. Just going to switch. No, somewhere I had a window open with that LD special deal on it. Where did it go? I don't know. Yes, I've still got it here. So this is the link that was put in the chat earlier. So this is the Samsung air purifier, which is currently on special at LD for $299. So I definitely need to check this out. It would be it'd be cool to be able to hook this into the automation system. Alrighty, well, I'll look for a couple of quick comments, and then I'm going to wrap it up for the day. Yeah, so Peter Lawler said, "How's the lawnmower?" Well, the lawnmower is still mowing the lawn. It is working just fine.
Looks great out there.
Yeah, the nice thing is that I haven't mowed the main area of the lawn personally for a few years now. It's just always nice and flat. I still do have to use the manual mower for the edges, like some of the edge areas that the auto mower doesn't get to, and I also use it in the front yard and on the nature strip. So what I need to be able to do is get back to this very old project. This is a project from years and years ago, which was the idea of making a thing under the house so that the auto mower can pass underneath my house, get into the front yard, and then mow that as well. Yep. Ooh, Mike Causer said it was last week's special buy, but there were still 6 of them at my local Aldi this morning. Yeah, that is really interesting. So I might go and check my Aldi and see if they have any of those air purifiers. So did you? Oh no. Okay. So this is a very good question. Peter Lawler said, "Did I reverse engineer the controller software?" This is in relation to the auto mower. No, I haven't, and I need to start doing some fun hacks on it. I've got lots of ideas for things I could do with the auto mower, and initially I didn't want to touch it because it was supplied by Husqvarna, and technically they still owned it, and so I didn't want to start hacking around on it and then have them turn up and say, "We want our mower back now." But it's been years and I haven't heard from them, so I suppose I own it now. It's old enough that they wouldn't want it back, so yeah. It would now be reasonable for me to start messing around with it. Yeah, so Gary pointed out, this is in relation to the air purifier, and to have modus on-off inside would be a simple hack. Yeah, I'm going to get one, I think. I'm convinced enough that now that I've seen the effect that the soldering iron has on the stuff that's floating around in the air, I really do think it's worth getting an air purifier and quantify the effect that it has. Ooh. So UTB-FCC said, it's very easy to hack the ALAN T500 HEPA air purifier, just adding MOSFETs into 3 lines, plus an ESP32, and you get a HEPA air purifier with 6 modes controllable from Node Red. Nice. Talking about MOSFETs, alright. One last thing before I sign off. Let me find a project that I think I would use for this. So I've got to think about, what did I even call it? I've got, sorry, my Eagle directory is many hundreds of projects long, so just finding something is a bit of a problem. It was ESP, that's right, I think it was called ESP Remote. Scrolling, ESP yes, here we go, ESP remote. This project, and I'll throw back to desktop. Come on, back to desktop. So this is a project I did a few years ago, and once again this falls into the it's been released. Well, no, it hasn't been released, but I could. Desktop, there, this. Okay, so this is a PCB with an ESP8266 on it. This runs Tasmoda, and it's got 4 MOSFETs on it, and they're set up as low side switches. So the idea is that what you could do is use this to hack something like a garage door remote control, or any of those devices that you, like just a 433 megahertz remote control. You attach the remote control into that area on the PCB. Let's see if this makes it any easier to see. No, not really. And then this runs Tasmoda, and it's got these 4 switched outputs, which means that you can patch these into the buttons on the remote control, and then use Tasmoda to control the remote control, which then controls whatever it is that you're wanting to control. And the whole thing is fairly small. As you can see from the version number here, this is version 3.1. This has been through quite a few iterations. I've been using these myself for years. They're very cool little boards, and I've never made them available. I really should. So many projects that are in this state. So this is a board that is specifically designed for hacking into things, so that you can use MOSFETs to switch the the manual buttons on whatever the device is that you're hacking. And it's got a little switch mode regulator on here so that it can take a wide input voltage range. And I've got another version of it, which is this one, which uses read relays, so that it's got complete electrical isolation from the target device. So you can use these 6 outputs. This version has 6 instead of 4. So these 6 switched outputs can be wired across the buttons on a target device, and then you run Tasmoda on the ESP8266, and you can control whatever your device is. Alrighty. Yeah, and once again, I've got a bunch of these. Where is it? Box is just is around here somewhere. ESP remote. ESP remote. I need to update my indexing system. So the thing where I tell different boxes to turn on does not yet know about all the boxes. It only knows about some of them. So, well, there's one. Okay, so that is oops, out of focus. So this is my little device for hacking for hacking devices to add control of buttons. That one and this one. Yeah, that one. I've got a bunch of them in here. Switch to the overhead camera. Hope I'm not showing anything on there that I shouldn't. I don't think so. So this one on the left is the one with read relays. So there's an ESP8266 with Tasmoda on it, and then the 6 switched outputs. And this one, which is in the box, the reason that this is such a strange shape like this is that it is designed to fit inside one of these plastic enclosures. So what I can do is just squeeze this. Oh, hang on. I need a screwdriver. There. And it's got this shape in the top, so you can get a screwdriver in. So what you can do is just squeeze this apart, pop that up, and the board comes out. And it fits onto those little retaining lugs in there. So this is the version of it which has the MOSFETs. So one on the left is read relays for the switched outputs. The one on the right has the MOSFETs here, and then these are the 4 MOSFET outputs. Well, inputs. It's for low side switching. So you take the PCB for your remote control and cable tie it onto that area, and then you patch across from those connections to it, and then apply power, and then you can control your device. Anyway, if I'm going to hack something like an air purifier that's got buttons that need to be pushed in order to control it, I'd use one of these 2 boards. One or the other, I don't know. yeah. So, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I am mentally fading, but come on, switch. I can't get this thing to switch. OBS is not responding. There we go. I need a better way of switching cameras. Yes, free deck. I need to build a free deck. In fact, I have built a free deck. I need to set it up. I don't know. I'm just saying random things now. That's a sign that I need to wrap this up. All right. Where can I put this now? Just here. When it gets to the point where I'm just rambling and I don't even know what I'm talking about, it is time to say goodbye. Wait. Peter said wait. More puppy. Ah, yes. Great idea. Hey, Astra. Come and say hello.
Let's see if we can do something.
Okay.
Is anything? Just give me 2 secs.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, puppy. Need something to sit.
All right.
Sit. You big. Big.
Hang on.
High five.
We've got to get the
High five. Oh, you need
the
to lie.
camera position. I've got to adjust the camera a little bit. Hang on. Let's see. It's sitting just on top of a monitor, which means that it's I can't really bring it down lower. That's better.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, puppy. Alright, it's a big moment.
We didn't
You see it?
plan the stage management here.
Okay, big. High five. High five. Yeah, go. Over. Over. Come on, over. 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 Here we go.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and she's got a squirrel. Squirrel.
She got the squirrel.
That's the end of that squirrel.
Cool.
There we go. Put your head. Give me a hand. Give me a hand. Oh, you love this squirrel, don't you? Okay. There you go. You get it. You get it. Come on, get it. Yes. Yum. Tasty squirrel.
Oh, good. All right. So, where are we? Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go. Thank you for coming along, and thank you, Andy, for being catering officer and sitting there for the last couple of hours flashing boards. This is it's been a really big help, saving me from having to do all of that flashing. So yes, I will see you next week probably. I've got to figure out where the next Sunday falls in relation to holidays and all of that sort of thing. But I really appreciate you coming along, and also thank you very much for the donations towards the air purifier fund. Those donations, I think, have tipped me over the edge, and I've got to the point where kind of the decision is made. I'm going to get an air purifier and see what I can do with linking it to the automation system. That is really, yeah, I think that'll be interesting, and a good practical use for the data coming from the air quality sensor. So, thank you very much. Have a fantastic weekend, whatever is left of it for you, and a great week this week. I will see you soon. See ya. I started saying bye and then changed it to see ya. So, see ya.